Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. Unfortunately, it's not a full house, but we've got a special episode. It's Specky and Spice. I'm joined today by the wonderful Liam. Liam, how are we doing?
We're doing good, mate. Doing good. 50% of us have managed to make an appearance tonight. So 50% is better than nothing, I suppose.
Well, if Hibs end the season with 50% wins, would we be happy with that? Probably.
Depends on how many of our games were draws. If we got a fair chunk of draws, I think I'd be quite happy with that. And do you know what? Do you know what would be quite class is if we just had a good run in home form next season. Like I really, this is going to segue into talk about like next season already straight at the beginning. But like I just really want the good vibes to come back at Easter Road next season, and us to win some games of football at Easter Road. Just being nice to be in that feeling of like going to Easter Road, kind of almost expecting to win. Anyway,
because one thing, like I tweeted about it the other day, but I didn't go into depth, but I was thinking about doing so. But like the end of the season, for me, I said it, like I never want there to be a time in my life without Hibs, but I was ready for this break that we've had. And I feel that, and then like there was all the kind of obscurity over, we've got this new manager we don't really know too much about, but I feel there's a lot of positivity around the club at the moment. And I just feel there's good vibes going on, as you mentioned.
I think that's it. When a manager comes in, I always think it's ideal for a manager to come in like at the end of a season because they get the pre-season to work with the players, but also they get to start the season with an entirely clean slate. And like I think in terms of getting off on the right kind of foot, I think that's really, really important for a lot of managers. I mean, clearly if he had an absolute shitmare during pre-season and we lost every single game and we got pumped to the League Cup group stages, he wouldn't have a clean slate. Like the knives would already be out. But there is something, there is a good feeling. I agree with you. There is a good feeling that's kind of back, and I think part of that's probably also allied to getting business done early in the transfer market as well. People have got a little bit of confidence that not necessarily that all the players are going to be the right fit, but that we're being active.
Aye, definitely. But we'll come into specifics in a little bit. But first, something that got announced. Unfortunately, we didn't see you modelling it on this occasion, but we've got our lovely away kit. I think it's fair to say it's a second year in a row in which they've hit like at least I'd say a minimum. I don't think you give the two of them below a 7 combined. Like I think they're at least above average.
I'm a huge fan of the away kit, like huge fan. Like when it came out, I was like, I looked at it and I'd kind of had a wee bit of a bit of intel that it was going to be a bit different and to expect something different. But when I first saw it, I was like, do you know what they've just nailed? They've nailed that kind of like, a lot of clubs are kind of doing like retro kits as their main kits at the moment. They've kind of nailed that sort of like retro vibe, but also like the colour schemes bang on. I think my only complaint, and sorry to kind of move from a negative to something really positive, is I think the long sleeve could have just done with the black cuffs like are on the short sleeve. If I was going to be a total fashionista and complain, but I do think the short sleeve away kit it went straight in my basket. Like I was a big fan.
I know, because like I was saying to Bex, my sister, like me and her always I always get at least one per year. Sometimes Bex gets two. But I think I'm definitely swaying more towards the away kit. I'd say now, if I had to give a rating to both of them after seeing them on like the home kit on during the games over in Portugal, I'd probably give the home one probably like a 7.5 because I like sitting on the fence sometimes. I don't think it's quite an 8, but I don't think it's as low as a 7. But I'd give the away kit, even without seeing it being played in, I'd give that at least a 9. I think it's banging. The only complaint I've got is I love cabbage and I love the fact that they've called it the cabbage kit, but I'm not really getting cabbage vibes from it, to be honest.
I just don't know how tidy a cabbage kit could actually be though. like when they put that wee sign that was on the traffic lights in Leaf, and I was like looking at it and I was going, oh, they're going to try something really ratchet. It's going to be like a cabbage in the front and ribs on the back, and it's going to be absolutely stinking. So there was a part of me that was really worried that they were going to F it up majorly. But now when I saw it, I was like, they've just absolutely nailed that. And to be fair to Joma, I've been looking at some of the kits. Conal Tracy's actually been doing a really good thread on all the Scottish kits that have been released. I've been looking at the Joma kits and comparing them to kits of other clubs, and to be honest, I think they're making the best kits in football, like genuinely. And I know there's some really nice ones, like the Aberdeen home one this season's obviously got quite a lot of plaudits. It's very simple and it's nice, and I think the Celtic away one, the black with the sort of mint vertical stripes, is quite nice. But I think Joma are nailing it.
Not mate, have to agree. And also shout out to Connell. Very fun thread that he's got going on there. a few takes that he's got, as always, aren't quite hitting my preferences, but that's how he be. But yeah, no. So let us know. Send us your tweets and comments, and let us know what you think about the kits, because that's something that we'd find quite fun. We always like to criticize everybody else for being wrong, so give us more people to criticize. But yes, moving on. Hibs have actually played 2 games to kickstart the pre-season. Over in Algarve, we played Hartlepool, which was a 2-0 victory, followed by a 4-2 victory against Burton Albion. I'll be honest, hold my hands up. I was working and could not watch the Hartlepool game. Was that one that you managed to catch live yourself, Liam?
I was trying to think of what stage of COVID I was at that point. I'd COVID last week, and I was kind of sort of semi watching the Hartlepool game, but also semi trying to work at the same time whilst having COVID. So I caught most of, I think, the kind of important bits of the game. I think, and I'll probably say this on both of the games, and I don't want to be a killjoy, but I think like the quality of the opposition for me was quite evident in both games, particularly the Hartlepool game. They were a poor side, and I felt like, to be honest, it was a bit of a training exercise for us. Like, we controlled possession for large spells. I don't think Marshall or Dabrowski had a save to make. And to be honest, we were streets ahead of them. I think my only criticism of Hibs in terms of performance would be, and I know it's a pre-season game, but we'd probably like to have seen us score more than a couple, because I just thought they were that poor.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. I'll make my comments on like general things before the Burton game, because I can't really make comments. Good couple of goals, to be fair. I've watched them back. Nice to see a score from a set piece. I think something that we struggled with a bit last season. I think we've struggled for the past couple of seasons. We've not really had consistent set piece takers for the last maybe 3-4 seasons, like since Lennon left, I think. So it's nice to see us get in on the board, and it's something that Lee Johnson's spoke about, that he's passionate about. It's a massive advantage if you've got solid set pieces, especially corners, I think. So it's nice seeing a score from them on the off. But I think the physicality of the players is something that's really impressed me. I think not quite as much as Melkerson, but I think even Jake Doyle-Hayes, he's looked a bit more physical. I think he's fleshed out a bit, and I think just the players in general, and obviously it's the first week pre-season, so obviously they've been non-stop fitness, but I do think they looked quite a bit sharper than they did last season.
I think so. I think there was like some nice wee interchanges, and I think I noticed us looking to get the ball forward quicker, which was very evident. I think sometimes though, it's easier to get the ball forward quicker when you're playing against pure opposition. And I don't want to labour the point, but like, if you've got a bit more time on the ball and you've got space to pick out the pass, it can be that bit easier to do. But having said that, one of the things that certainly in the Hartlepool game they kind of guarded against is they did play for quite long spells that game, quite a deep line. So it's not like we were able to just kind of knock the ball in behind like you might be able to do in some games in Scotland. A lot of it was kind of having to, look for guys that were either coming short or moving into the wide areas. But no, it was a good workout at the end of the day. I also think that a game when it's like 30 minutes is incredibly disjointed, especially when you change the entire 11. So it is really hard to kind of make any judgments off the back of it.
I keep forgetting that. Like, I didn't watch the games, obviously. I'm not even conking in my head that it was 3 30 minutes. That's like, is it ice hockey do 3 20-minute periods?
Yes, ice hockey do 3 20 minutes. It was just the Hartlepool game. The Burton game was conventional 45 minutes. But I think that's become quite like, I may say common, but like I've seen a few teams do that in pre-season, and I think for more than anything, I think it's just because they're in like warm weather camps and they would need to take water breaks anyway because of the heat. Having just not long returned from holiday, I can testify that doing any form of exercise in 29, 30 degree heat is extremely hard work.
100%. But just we've not got too much to talk about today, so I'm going to give us a bit of an agenda. There's been some people at the elite level of the game that have talked about different forms of like format changes in football. Do you think that any form of time change could actually work? Was there anything in a 30 minutes that could actually make the game a bit more entertaining?
Nah, the only thing I would want to see in football, which I'm a massive advocate for, and people will not like this shout, but I think there needs to be a game clock that stops when the ball goes out of play. Because I think you see far too many games of football these days where you get 90 minutes of football plus injury time, but the ball spends about 40 minutes of that time in play. I think there was a mad stat that was doing the rounds last season.
Rangers, wasn't it?
I think it was Motherwell or St Johnstone. It was one of the two, and apparently, like their average game the ball, the amount of time that the ball spends in play, so like where there's active football happening on the park, the amount of time the ball spends on play is like less than 50% of the 90 minutes. So people are paying like 20 odd quid to go and see a game of football and getting like 40 odd minutes worth of action. If there was a stop clock where the minute the ball goes out for a throw in, or the minute there's a substitution or whatever, a corner taken, then the game stops. This clock stops, sorry. I think that would make a massive improvement, and it would stop all the bitching and moaning you get about like players going down injured and like substitutes taking ages to get off the pitch and all that shit. Just focus on the amount of time that the game's on.
The only thing I would have to that is obviously time wasting isn't anything that should ever be encouraged, but I do think that it can sometimes give smaller teams an opportunity against bigger teams, because realistically, if you play 90 minutes of non-stop football against Man City and you're the likes of like an Aston Villa, you're not going to stand a chance if they're also allowed like 5 subs in that. But I do accept that it would obviously make a more entertaining game if you did get non-stop action as opposed to having to watch people crawl off the pitch.
Time waste of the ball and play. Like, just keep the ball and play. Like, find a way to time waste of the ball and play. I mean, like, there's not many things from other sports that I look at and go, football could adopt, because I think football's generally ahead in most things. But I do think that would make a massive difference to how people felt. But it might remove some of the drama. Like, you wouldn't get like injury time per se any longer. It would be just that last couple of minutes, but maybe that would make it even more dramatic, especially if the ball keeps going out of play for a corner or a throw in or whatever, and the clock keeps on stopping. Like, it could build momentum. I don't know. I just think it would be a thing that FIFA should look at, but they probably won't, because FIFA do things like give the World Cup to Qatar. So what the fuck do they know?
Last thing on that, I just imagine Willie Collum trying to control his stop clock. I do not trust that man to bloody tie his shoelaces, never mind control a clock. But moving on, a game that actually had a conventional time period was the Burton Albion game. We went 1-0 down straight away and then literally dominated and battered them. I managed to watch that game. I did do a lack of work and was annoying people in the YouTube comment section during the game. I would not mind a comment section during every game. I just thought it was so daft. But I found it really refreshing. I think that the tempo we played at, as you did say, Burton Albion, clearly not anywhere near our level. That was evident in the game that we played there. But I thought Hibs played, they impressed me. I think that the likes of Joe Newell for Ellie Yuan's goal, I thought that it was fantastic. That's the type of thing that I've been screaming about Joe Newell doing. So yeah, I just thought that Joe Newell and Jake Doherty's this pre-season and the highlights and the actual game I watched, I've been very forward thinking when on the ball. Is that something that you picked up on? Is that something that you think Lee Johnson's trying to drill into them?
I think so. I think it was evident in both games, to be fair, but probably more so in the Burton game. They did have like a sort of 7-8 minute spell at the end of the game, and I thought, oh fuck. And then, like, from that point onwards, really we controlled it, and I felt like 4-2 really flattered them, like really flattered them. And I felt like when we got the ball forward into kind of wide areas, both left and right, and stretch the game, I just felt like they were kind of there for the taking. We were kind of carving through them without any real difficulty. I'd say we've maybe lost a wee bit when Doidge came on, because he just wasn't as much of a threat in terms of kind of making runs and creating space for himself. And I think that's maybe a reflection on just how well some of the new guys have started and the freshness that they've brought to the team. Probably in some of that allied with just, I guess, having the enthusiasm, having just joined a new club. Like, I think all players have always got that bounce when they first join a new club, where it's exciting, and we were watching them through the lens of like being excited as well because they're new. So, there was lots of positives in the attacking sense, definitely.
Yeah, and I think obviously Melkerson then netted himself 2 goals, very, very striker goals that he scored. I think the nice thing as well as last season, even though we score every couple of games, they were just kind of boring goals. There wasn't really too many. Obviously, Jake Doyle Hayes had his 2 screamers, but apart from that, there wasn't really many standout goals. But the fluidity of the moves when we scored these goals was something that I just thought was very satisfying. Obviously, Kenna's goal was a bit of a scuff that kind of floated into the net. I'm not really sure how that managed to go in, but both of Melkerson's goals I thought were really well worked. And hold the hands up if you can keep this level up the whole season. Josh Campbell looked very good. As we said, not great opposition, but Josh Campbell played very well in that game.
And he played a bit further forward, didn't he, in both games? it's an interesting one with Josh Campbell because he has been written off, and I'm certainly not pointing fingers when I say that, because I think we've probably all been guilty of it. Maybe not giving him a fair crack of the whip, or maybe we have given him a fair crack of the whip, but he just wasn't up to it last season. But he was asked to play far too many games last season in a position where he just didn't really look very comfortable, didn't look comfortable taking the ball in the half turn. But the games he did look better, and he was playing that wee bit further forward and, playing facing the goal. And we maybe got to see a bit more of the good side of his game. He looked actually quite dynamic, I thought, in quite large spells of that game. But also he's probably helped by actually having guys that are prepared to run on behind him, like Melkerson, Runar Hauga. Can't remember who else was on the park at that point, but there was players actually making runs in the channels. And we just didn't see that last season at all, really, because we played a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 system where the wing backs were coming from behind them. So there was never really anyone running into space in the wide areas in front of them. So changing the system can help players. I think the jury's still very much out for me on Josh Campbell. I still believe the best thing for him to do in order to rebuild his kind of confidence in his game would be for him to go out and loan. But if Lee Johnson thinks he's up to it, then give him a chance.
The thing is as well, I think Burton Albion at a push could potentially be like bottom half championship level. So if we got him out to a team and he was playing against that level of opposition, then hopefully he could elevate his game. But yeah, no, as I say, I think if he plays like he did week in and week out, even against better opposition, I think there was a certain swagger and confidence. That's something that I picked up on. Obviously, wanting to impress a new manager, you have to kind of show that you're ready and determined for it. And I think that was something that came through in these couple of games.
It's difficult here because you're trying to assess the level of the teams that you're playing against and making a judgment. But clearly, we're about to play 4 games in the League Cup against lesser opposition. So there is definitely an opportunity there for all the players that are involved and have been involved to make an impression in those games that would potentially see them playing in the league fixtures. But also then conversely, what you don't want to do is get ahead of yourself because you scud, shite like Falkirk and Clyde by 3 or 4. That everything's rosy when it might not be. So it is a tough balance for Johnson, I think, to strike balls the guys in charge of recruitment too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is as well, I think at this point I would struggle to name the starting 11 just because we've really not seen them merge together and we're still not really sure what the likes of Yuan and Tavares, etc., will actually play in the squad. But if you can give me, just before we move on from these 2 games, final thing, if you can give me 3 players that impressed you and stood out to you that you thought, you know what, I'm impressed with them this pre-season.
So, no, that's a tough one. I don't want to go for all new guys because I think that's the really obvious easy shout. So I'm going to say Melkerson, just based on getting that double. I thought he took the 2 chances as well. I think he probably could have and should have got a hat trick in that game too. So I think he impressed me. One who really sneakily impressed me, and I've not seen a huge number of people shouting about it, but then I've kind of been off the grid a wee bit, is Alan Del Ferrier. I thought he was really good in a defensive midfield role. And when we signed him, obviously I'd kind of thought I was under the impression he was going to be a right back and then maybe potentially a centre half. And then he's come on in that game against St Johnstone. I know it was only the last 10 minutes or whatever, and played defensive midfield. And he's played defensive midfield in those 2 games. And I'm thinking, fuck, with how we needed a defensive midfielder the second half of last season, did we have one at the club the whole time who could have just stepped into that role, who might have been able to offer us something a wee bit different? So he impressed me. And then, who else? So pick a new guy. I've seen a lot of plaudits for Lewis Miller. And I think he looks like an athlete. And I think he could be a very good player from him, but I can't say I was that impressed by him. So I'm going to go with Eli Yuan. I just thought his ability to kind of stretch the game. I felt like he attracted quite a bit of attention from the defenders, and he looks a physical presence as well. Like when he's bearing down on goal, you're like, he looks like he's got a level of assuredness about him. So, a big fan. You give me 3. Who were your 3 based on the Burton game?
I'll obviously pick 3 different ones to yourself. I thought McClelland. I don't think he's going to be a starter this season, but I think he did look good in the first half against what they called Burton. Yeah, I completely agree on Miller. I think he had two solid games. I don't think that he was overly impressive. I think if he didn't have a hype train going into the two games, people wouldn't have really noticed him, which would have been fair enough. I'm going to give credit to him again. I don't think he's going to be an essential player this year, but I'm happy that he's made a bit of a splash. I thought Hauga was good in both games from highlights that I've seen, and it was a shame he went off injured because I thought he was absolutely flying against Burton.
Yeah, I would agree. He was really sneakily quite good, eh? Like he's just got the one thing. I think it was maybe. Was it you and who I think on the squad review podcast was like, I'm not keen on him. He looks kind of limited or something. And I think he cited kind of overhead kicks he tried. I think he's one of those players who is very, very, very direct and probably doesn't have a lot of nuance to his game. Like he has one way of playing, and I think that's okay though. Like if that's just what you're good at. Like if you think about Ivan Sproul, like Ivan Sproul didn't have a subtlety in his game at all. He just used to be a guy that would just obviously had that electric pace, which kind of set him about for other players. But if you've just got one thing that you're really, really exceptionally good at and you use it all the time, then why not? And his directness is a threat, definitely.
Yeah. And then one final one for me. This is mainly just excitement for the season because I've given two guys I don't actually think are going to make an impact. Aidan McGeady, I think that he didn't really do too much, but I think you can tell he's kind of got that touch of class about him. Just the way he conducts himself. I just think that we've got a good player in our hands. I know that, again, he might not play every single minute of every game, but I think that he will be very impactful. And I think that by the end of the season, he'll hopefully have turned himself into a bit of a cult hero.
Greg said something really important about him. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, where he said, and I think you've reiterated it as well about this not having a set piece taker. And I think you could instantly see the quality of delivery has just gone up a notch. Like I'm not saying he's going to score loads of goals from like direct free kicks or anything like that, but just like balls into the box from free kicks in deep areas and corners. I think we'll create a lot more chances.
Yeah, 100%. I think like that's the main thing as well that I'm getting quite excited about. The physicality, because I think if you've got players that are physical in the box and aren't afraid to like shove around, because a lot of last season felt like we were kind of just getting ragdolled by other teams. So if we've actually got players that are in the box and we're getting good balls into the box and players that will fight for it, and something that we're going to come on to now, speaking about the content that the club have been putting out. We'll start quickly with Porteous. I think he's someone that's got a bit of a fire in his belly. Obviously, we're all desperate for him to sign a new contract. He's not yet, but I thought that mic'd up video was really good. At the start of the video, I don't know if it was that video or if the other video, but Lee Johnson says to Ryan, look, you're going to be mic'd up. We want you to show that you're a leader. Just take, like he essentially said, take Jack Bryden under your wing and just make sure he has a good game. Then it was brilliant. I thought it was a really fun video to watch, and Ryan just came across really well. Have you caught that video yet?
I have. At the risk of sounding like contrary, I think to me it was a bit like man does his job. Like
of course.
It was good. It was good content from the club to put out. Like, I thought it was a good idea, but he didn't. I saw those people tweeting afterwards being like, this is the leadership qualities we've been missing and just make him captain of this now. And I'm like, he basically told people where the runners were and instructed the midfield where to stand when passing them the ball and reiterated to people to pick up their man. It was fine. Like, it was decent. It was good content. I quite like it. I'd like to see more of it. But I thought it was interesting. The club chose Ryan Porteous to mic up.
Yeah, and the thing is, just so all the listeners are aware, Liam does play in a very competitive, is it 5s or 7s league? And their communication is tip top, so that's why he's not overly impressed as we all might be.
I don't know if our communication is tip top. I've not played in so many weeks now because of various reasons that I'm hearing that the communication's maybe not been as good when I've not been playing. So I'll need to kind of go and reset the standards a wee bit.
Or maybe reset the tempers if you're not there to keep certain players calm who might not be on the podcast tonight. I don't know who will.
I don't think he's even the guilty party on this occasion.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Interesting. Well, you'll have to tell me about that off air because I find things like that very interesting. But moving on, another bit of insight we got into the club, as I just mentioned, Lee Johnson's tactical insight. Same again, kind of just doing his job. But it's I love the thing is with football, obviously, like it's difficult to appreciate the fact that if someone said to you at work every single day you have to go and do training every day. Like you're not actually going to do your job, you're going to train, and then once a week we're going to test you on how your training went, and then we're going to do that for the next 38 weeks. If someone says that to you, it actually sounds like torture, but it's football. And I just love all the little small things. Like, have you caught that video yet?
I have. It was good actually. It was an interesting site. I found some of it quite like hard to follow, and that just I think you end up spending quite a bit of time trying to figure out who he's talking to. I think there was one point he was kind of like talking to Chris Cadden, and you could always see the back of Cadden's head. But no, it was interesting, and I think what the club are obviously trying to do is get across this like new style in a sort of like quite a clever sort of PR way, which I think they're doing a good job of. Again, I think in balance, one thing I would say is I think like the inside training stuff and the high B buzz has been like quite sporadic. Like it doesn't really come out consistently. So hopefully they can kind of keep up the inside training stuff, because it is interesting. It is interesting to see what they're working on as well. That drill that they were doing that was like in the wide areas where they were kind of like passing the ball inside and then getting it back out wide, I thought was really fascinating. I can't remember what he described it as. It was something like try to push the overload or something like that. But if you're mad for like club content like that, people are just going to lap that up. So do more of it. Like it's easily done.
And they really need to bring back a series like Outside the Box or whatever it was called, because I used to be obsessed with that. I must have watched that about 20 times in my life, honestly. I thought it was class.
Is any of it still on YouTube?
Yeah. I'm like, we're gonna do an online test now. Because honestly, if you've not seen this, we will share it on the Twitter because it is absolutely outside.
What was the thing they done? Was it Outside the Box where they got Dominic Malonga in a taxi and started like taking him about Edinburgh? Do you mind
that's what they've done the first, like he gets the card, he's like YOLO. There's different class, I think there's one Outside the Box. Yeah, Outside the Box presented by Marathon Bet. Yeah, we will post on Twitter because they've got them all. 6 years ago that was. Apologies, we've descended into madness. Sorry, I got excited and I absolutely killed our flow. Well, I didn't really. We're just chatting nonsense anyway. But Outside the Box, get it watched. It's essentially what we're saying. But yeah, in terms of the club as a whole, though, things seem to be on the up as we're coming to the new season. Is that fair to say? Are you feeling a lot more I'm assuming you're feeling a lot more positive than you did at the end of the season, because it's not difficult.
I mean, I came away from the St Johnstone game because I think we just scudded them 4-0, and like everyone knows that football fans are sucker for recency bias. Like I kind of came away from that game probably feeling more positive than I should. But I think, as we mentioned earlier, the combination of getting new signings and quite some good run-outs in the early couple of pre-season games and some engaging content from the club, like all those things added together, I think things are in a pretty good place at the minute. And I think, in all honesty, like as long as we do well enough in this League Cup, like win 3 out of the 4 games, ideally win all 4, then I think that good feeling will continue to kind of hang around. Because the rest of the pre-season will be pretty irrelevant. But without wanting to jump too far ahead, like the start of the season that we've got, it could either be like totally on the up and up, and we're on this like really roller coaster of like excitement, or it could come crashing back down to earth with a bang with the fixtures that we've got at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. But we'll cover them a bit more depth probably in a couple of weeks' time. But we're looking at our first competitive game of this season, first competitive game under Lee Johnson. We have got Clyde at home, is it? Home this weekend?
We're Clyde at home.
Clyde at home this weekend. What are your thoughts? Let's try and devise a first team 11. Obviously, it's probably going to be a slightly rotated team. So take me through it, and then I'll add in if I think you're wrong at all.
So I think initially probably Marshall in goals, because I just think when you're playing these kind of early stage League Cup games, I think you put your best team out to begin with. So I think Marshall in goals. I probably will Cadden, Porteous.
Are we going McClelland for a left foot?
don't. Is he even right foot? Is he even left foot? I think he may be right.
Is he not? I thought he was. I might be talking about.
I don't know. I felt like in the game he was using his right quite a lot. I probably would go McClelland. It would be between McClelland and Bryden. I know that's incredibly harsh on Rocky, but I think that's who I'd go with. And then probably Stevenson at left back, based on nothing other than those 2 pre-season games. I thought he was markedly better than Doig. And then midfield, I'd probably go Nohan Kenna, Joe Newell, and Henderson in the middle. And then I'd go, my 2 white players would be probably Tavares and McGeady, and then Eliuan up front.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think there's and I know I've spent the entire season last year saying they shouldn't be playing together, but I think with a player like Noah Kenna in there that'll sit deeper and kind of force Newell and Doyle Hayes to play a foot farther forward, I think that they potentially could work. But myself, I would be a toss-up between Newell and Doyle Hayes. I think that Henderson, even though he probably should have scored about 17 goals between the 2 games, I thought did look very dangerous when going forward, which I said last season, I think if he comes into a better team this year, then he'll definitely be a lot more productive, which I still think is the case. I think that we've definitely got a good player in him, so hopefully he can hit the ground running when it comes to competitive games. And yeah, no, I agree. I think at the moment, Ellie Yuan is probably the starter over Melkerson. And I would say that I think Nisbet is probably, like, obviously it's unfair to Ellie because he's only just joined, but I'd say that Nisbet's probably still the number 1 striker at the club.
I mean, based off like 245 minutes in pre-season, I would say so. But I think that was always going to be the case. I think even if we bring in another striker, which I'm still kind of hoping that we do, I still think Nisbet will be the top dog. But the only thing that might count against Nisbet is if we're playing a system with a lone striker, we might find somebody, or we might already have someone in the club who's better at doing that role than Kevin Nisbet is, and then he's going to have to work hard to get minutes off the bench. What was interesting about Melkerson is he obviously played quite wide in the games, and I think he might have to work on playing in the wide areas in order to get himself kind of a starting role in the team as well. But who knows what's going to happen over the next few games? Because I do feel like one thing is for certain, that the way we're playing and the way he wants to set up, like, we're going to create quite a lot of chances in these pre-season games. And remember Simon Murray's first season, well, his only season, but you remember Simon Murray's season where he scored like 6 or 7 goals in the League Cup group stages, and he got off to a total flyer, and then he kind of got quite a long leash, after that. Like, everyone kind of was like hyping him up, and then quite a few games into the season we realised that Simon Murray probably wasn't the answer. But like, it just shows you how big that can be though for someone's like confidence, if they can get off to a good start in the League Cup and, you know, get a couple of games where they maybe get a brace. It would be massive for those players coming through. But who do you think is going to start up front? You then?
Yeah, I agree. I think, to be fair with the team, you've probably got it relatively spot on. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a bit more rotation. I think that Lee Johnson's probably got in his head a solid starting 11 for the start of the season that we're not sure of. I don't think we've got it spot on for what he's wanting, but I think he's got it in his head, and I think he'll kind of experiment with a few different pieces, like maybe a different midfielder in, or maybe not start Tavares. Like, I think that his mindset will be, if I have one starter on in the same position, I can have like one player I want to kind of gauge a bit more of, because obviously he's seen them play for different teams if they've done their scouting, but he's not seen them play in his system. So I think that will be a big thing for him. But yeah, no, your team, if that started against Clyde, I'd be happy. But against Clyde, I would be expecting us to start our like 21s and be happy. No offense to Clyde, but obviously we're like 3 divisions above them, so we should be winning this game. Speaking of which, give me a score prediction, Liam. What are you thinking with the team you've put out? Are we putting the pump on, or are we going to have a frustrating game?
So, which is very, very much rare for me, I did actually go and have a wee look at Clyde's like squad list for this, and thought, I'll have a wee sketch of who we've got at the club. And I reminded myself of Stephen Tico's signed for Clyde in the summer, which is like the weirdest signing ever. The return of Stephen Tico at Easter Road. I think he's now like well into his 30s.
Aye.
And when he was at Hibs, he was basically a young boy. So I like based on nothing other than looking at our squad, they've got Connor Duffy as well, who's at Hibs as a young player. I think he maybe would have played under. I think he maybe would have played when we were down in the Championship a couple of times. And Morgaro Gomes, who's definitely yesterday's man. I'm going to say 4-0 Hibs, and I don't think that's even like. I don't think that's even over egging it. Like I would like to think that 4-0 will be the starting point. Like I think probably the handicap's about 3 goals. I think we are still very early days, obviously in the Johnson era, and it's his first competitive game and all that. So you should probably reset expectations a wee bit. I'm maybe being a bit too gallus, but I just think we'll have way too much for them at home. Big pitch at Easter Road as well, make it really difficult for them. What do you think?
I think that we tend to start seasons quite well. I think even last year we kind of hit the ground running first few games, and it's kind of been a common theme the last few years. So I reckon, just to be dramatic, I'm going to double your score. No, I'm not going to double. I'm not going to win it 8-0. I'm going to go 6. I can't do maths. I'm going to do 6-0 Hibs. I think that we're going to get 4 different scorers. Melkerson will get 2, and it'll be a good laugh. I think it'll be nice, chilled vibes, and we'll all feel nice and jolly after the first game of the season. That's the hope.
I'm buzzing to be back at Easter Road, even if it's just Clyde at home, and I know there's not going to be many people there because it's like the trade holidays and that in Edinburgh, so it'll obviously be quite quiet. But like, I'm just buzzing to be back at Easter Road after like 7 weeks or something away. I think it'll be plain sailing.
I'm going to be one of those part-timers for the next month or so. I've got a very busy work month, so unfortunately I won't be making it up for any of the group stage games. If we'd got a really fun away day like Cove Rangers away, I probably would have flew up for it for a laugh, but I can't really justify coming back to see us pump Clyde 6-0 realistically, especially with a busy work month. So
just one of the fans, just go to the derbies in the Old Firm at home.
Mate, that's literally how I'm kickstarting the season. I'm away on holiday for the St Johnstone game, and then I'll move back in Edinburgh until the Hearts game. But we'll be there. So finally, that's just covered off all our talking points. But we've got a couple of questions. We've got 4 questions just to round us off. We'll not take too long on them because we've probably covered them in roundabout ways. There's one that we definitely haven't, but I think you're aware of that question anyway. But the first one comes from F Fraser 1875, who said, "What player or players are to make the difference this season?" Give us 3. Give us 3. Then that'll cover players.
I think we've probably touched on one. I was not a massive advocate of the Aidan McGeady signing. I just the idea of signing a 36-year-old winger. I was not a massive advocate of it. But I think more and more I've come to terms with over the last few days the value he will bring to the team. And I think particularly in games where teams are going to sit in against us and make it difficult, I think he'll be the guy that will unpick the lock. So I'm really excited to see him as the new signing. I also think we've touched on it again, but I think the pace and physicality that UM will bring in the final third could be massive for us in games that are the opposite of those games where we're not got as much of the ball, we've not got as much possession, and we need to hit teams on the counter. I think a guy that's got legitimate out pace will make a massive difference.
Yeah. And are you giving us one more?
Oh, 3. No Hank Kenner, because we need a bastard, and hopefully he can be that bastard.
Yeah, I like it. I'm going to be completely against what Harry said literally like 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago. I think Joe Newell, just because he made one really good tackle and progressive run against Burton Albion in a pre-season friendly to help us tie the game. I think he's going to have a big season. He's going to prove me wrong, and we're going to play back the clip of me saying that I'd happily see him leave the club at the end of the season after he gets Player of the Year. He's not good, but hopefully rubs it in my face. I think David Marshall, I think that speaking of players that are a bit older on the old side, I think he's going to have a great season. I think he'll be of similar ilk to Craig Gordon in the sense that by the end of the year, everybody will be wishing that they're a player of that impact at their club. And thirdly, I'm going to go for Lewis Stevenson. I think I'm just rocking with guys that are a bit veteran in the squad. I think that, as you say, had a really good pre-season. The man just doesn't seem to age somehow. I don't think he's getting better and better. I think he's just consistently the same Lewis Stevenson that he's been for the past 6 years, and that is consistently pass marks. And I think in a transition, is it fair to call it a transition year with a new manager coming in?
I think a lot of years of transition years, but this is definitely a transitional year for us.
But having that consistent, just person you can rely on the whole time, I think will be a big thing for us. So yeah, thank you, Fraser1875, for your question. And going to a friend of the pod who likes to call me an embarrassment, Dave Graham, the real Dave, asked, did Liam use a sea spray, then blow dry, then a light pomade? Could you please enlighten us, Liam?
I think what Dave's referring to is hair products there. And as Dave knows, I don't use hair products in my hair. I'm a strictly productless man. I care about the environment greatly. I don't even use brow cream. I'm very much basic. However, I am partial to a blow dry. So thank you for your question, Dave. And yes, I am wearing white gutties at the moment. Just in case you're wondering, Dave.
Well, we're going to have to try and delve into this secret. One follow-up question, and we'll leave it there. What type of shampoo do you use? Because there must be something that helps that glorious hair look as good as it does.
Mate, you don't want to know what kind of shampoo I use. It's nothing special. I'm not even going to talk about the shampoo I use. It's like it's no head and shoulders, but it's just about energy. If you get my drift.
Fair. Yeah, I feel like Plankton trying to steal the
conditioner's a myth.
I feel like Plankton trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Like it's just not going to happen for me. But moving on to the next one, we've got John McIntosh, and he asked, "What is the goal this season?" Well, he said, "What is the season goal?" But I'm going to flip that. What is the goal this season for you? What are Hibs actually aiming for?
I think European football has to be a goal this season. And to be honest, with Celtic and Rangers probably competing in Europe and putting a great deal of focus on that, and Hearts even being in the group stages of some form till Christmas. I think we've got to be looking at one of the cups as well. I really do. I think this is a season for it. I think sometimes stars align and you just have to go for it. With the caveat, obviously, if we get a really difficult draw, it'll be what it'll be. But I genuinely think European football, which is only really top 5 out of 12 teams, that should really be kind of bare minimum for Hibs, to be honest. And then a cup, I think that's wholly achievable. And probably allied to that is just this thing about brand of football and it being a better brand of football, and just Easter Road being a fun place to go to again would be nice.
Yeah. I'll go for a slightly different one because you know how I be. I'll go for, I want to beat every team in the league at least once. I said that at the start of last season. It's something, it's something that I consistently want. It's one of those things that whenever I played Football Manager, I've always aimed for. I want to beat every team in the league at least once. It's something that I aspire Hibs to do, because I think if we're playing 2 home games a season against any team, I think we should win 1 out of 2 of them. And also on the back of that, it kind of coincides with it. I want us to win at least 10 home games. We play 19 home games this season. I want us to have higher than a 50% win record at home. And yeah, that's my 2 aims. I want, as you say, like
that.
Pardon?
It should be achievable when you say it like that. I mean, we should really be winning 50% of our home games. You look at the league and look at the draw stats in the league, like really we should. But
because the thing is, going into any game, if you're playing a bottom 6 team at home, like no offense to anybody, but in my opinion, if you're Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, if you're playing any team at home in the league, you should be expecting a win. If you play any bottom 6 team in the league, you should be demanding a win, in my opinion. That's probably the brackets that I've kind of put of teams that can currently expect wins against teams. And I obviously put us firmly in that bracket. And then with that, I think if we did get at least 10 home wins and we can kind of get a solid away record, because our away record over the last few years has been decent, then hopefully it would tick off most of your list as well, because that would always be good fun if we're both happy chappies by the end of the season. But final question, I'll do a quick refresh at Twitter just to make sure I've not missed anyone. But the final question comes in from Logan Simpson, HFC, and he said, what signings plus McGuinness are you most excited to see? We've already answered the players we're most excited to see, but Kyle McGuinness. We can talk about him for a quick minute to round us off because he makes us very happy. Liam, how excited would you be if he was fit to play in the upcoming Edinburgh Derby and Rangers games?
First of all, Logan, I'm looking forward to seeing him at Easter Road. I've not seen him for a whole 7 weeks now since the end of last season. So he's number one that I'm most excited to see. But then I think in terms of the player, Kyle McGuinness, obviously on his kind of way back and he's doing his rehab at the minute. I'm really hoping that he's kind of good to go from the sort of first league game of the season, and that we can get to see him out there, because just the impact that he could have, particularly in a team that plays kind of a really progressive style of football, where midfield runners are kind of given the license to be midfield runners. I think he could really flourish in this team. I think he could be a massive contributor. And one thing that runners create is space around them as well, and space on the edge of the box. I think we kind of saw in and around the box, on the edge of the box last season, he was absolutely deadly. So I think this could be a massive, massive, massive opportunity for him if he can get fit and stay fit, and I'm fucking hoping that he does.
Fingers crossed, and we can reclaim what is the Kyle McGuinness song in Scottish football. Screw your John Lundstrom, he's pish. Kyle McGuinness is the best on earth, and he'll come back to prove it once again. But yes, thank you very much, Fraser, Dave, John, and Logan, for your questions. Liam, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
You're most welcome. It was good to join you. I quite enjoyed that. Nice chilled run through what's going on. And looking forward to Saturday. Let's get started.
Come on. But yes, thanks for listening. We're not sure when we'll be back. We'll be back at some point next week. Hibs have probably played at least one game. We'll definitely play the Clyde game. But we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Nice one. Cheers.